The North. Known for its industry, hard-working and innovative people, we are the engineers of the past and always look for solutions for the future. Our Creative North wants to celebrate that and show the world what we can do.
Welcome to Our Creative North, the show that celebrates the creative and digital media sector right here in the north of England. Now today we've gone a bit more creative than digital, and it's a really exciting episode where we send one of our creative pioneers to recycle some junk into art. And we also go and meet a couple of people who have made a business called Yurts and Squrts. You'll find out later on the show. But first, our creative pioneer.
My name's Lara Adcock, I'm from Sunderland College and I'm studying art and design. I'm here today to meet Karen, who works with Creative Recycling. I'm Lara, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Welcome to my studio.
Thank you.
I'm Karan Rann, I'm a visual artist and I really like using recycled materials. So I've just grabbed a few things out to show you today that have a relationship with an exhibition I've got on at the moment, and it's all to do with bottles that people have had a little play with. So I just wondered if you'd like to have a play with a bottle today.
Yeah, I'd love to, yeah.
Good, that's the right answer. Okay, so I'm not a bottle artist, but I do love bottles because I'm using a lot more recycled materials now, and they're just a great medium to work in. And then there's different ways of, like this one, I've used glass paints. They work really well on plastic, so that's another one with glass paints. This one and a few of the others, part of the idea of this particular project was to look at the history around Blaydon and this area. So we were using library resources, images and maps and things, copying them and using those materials to sort of, the idea was to throw a light on history. So literally throw a light with a tea light, or some of the other artworks that you'll see this afternoon have got light sources sort of threaded into them as well. So would you like to have a play?
I would, I'd love to.
Great. Okay, so with my projects I run a lot of workshops with everyone from like the weeest children right up to university and older people, and I love watching people play. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do, and it's just a wonderful way of coming up with new ways, new processes. You know, I get to see how other people are tackling things. So you would like to make one of the... Yes, I'd love to, because I know that you're in fashion as well. So I'm very curious what could be made. I'm going to do some spirals as well. So yes, do you want to... if I make a nick first, I'll start at this end. So it just needs any kind of small cutting, and then away. And I've just got a huge number of these children's scissors, but actually they're kind of sharp enough, so they do the job quite nicely. It's got to be one of the best jobs in the world, though, encouraging people to play. Yeah. And one of the things is these, like the little sort of designs that the manufacturers put into the bottles. You'll see this afternoon at the gallery, when there's light onto or through those, the shadows you get are really amazing. I'm going to cut through them now, but it was quite interesting how people sometimes kind of left those whole for the effect.
As Karen and Lara set about creating their art, I'm reminded of the time I used to make art. My mum told me it was the greatest art installation she'd ever put on display, right in front of the recycling bin for all to see. I was so proud.
We've made this lovely creation of a lily.
Well done, looks brilliant.
Thank you, I really enjoyed making it.
I'm so glad.
I can't believe you get all this stuff from recycled objects. Where do you get everything from? Is it donations or?
It depends on the project. So quite often if I'm doing something with plastic bottles, I'm working with community groups, so it's up to them to collect them. Schools are great as well, you put the word out in school, and if everyone's collecting a little bit. Then the problem is, besides being great visual artist, I'm also chief bottle washer. But that's fine, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing about bottles is if you make a mistake, you can just chuck it in the recycling and start again. So I had a project up in Scotland that was coastal, so I was scouring the beaches for the jetsam, flotsam. And just using that, but the plastic bottles is something I just keep coming back to because they're everywhere, and actually we do need to remember to pick them up. And if we're not making something as exquisite as that, to put them in the recycling.
Do you have many of your exhibitions with light sources in?
No, this is a new thing, actually. I've just 2 years ago I did a piece where we ended up collecting some stories as well, so it was figuring out a way of making the stories part of the show. So I ended up making these scallop shell, again I've got a picture of that, scallop shell sort of listening stations.
Oh wow, yeah.
So rather than having the sound sort of bleeding around a gallery, you had to kind of, it's like listening to the sea in a shell, but it was listening to these stories in a shell. So so this is the first project of using light sources, but I've really enjoyed it, and again I think that's something I will
definitely.
continue
It's so
to
simple,
use.
but it's so effective. The reflections and everything off the paint and everything, I love it.
They're great.
Yeah.
And it would just fit perfectly in the present exhibition. So we should go.
Yeah, I'd love to.
So here we are. I love this because this is the first piece people see when they walk in, and I just love the shadows that are falling on the wall. And so you can start seeing, as with the piece that you made, the sort of the different way that the colours are picked up and reflections.
And the shapes.
Yeah. So this one was made by the reading activist group at Blaydon Library, and they wanted a kind of a superhero effect. So this piece is going to go back into the library at the end of the exhibition, and they've got a whole space where books that they select that they think that might be interesting for other young people go on the shelves, and then this is going to sit on the shelf above them, and there's little lights running through there. I also worked with students from St Thomas More School in Blaydon, and so this one we called Journey Book. And I don't know if you remember, in the studio I showed you we've been experimenting with how to make books out of bottles. I didn't have a clue about the shape, and it was actually one of the girls from the group that came up with this idea of keeping the bits of the bottles sort of intact and cutting the books out of it. So it was a lovely piece of working together. And so each of them, they've got a sort of a book cover as well with the name on.
Where did the inspiration come from?
So the idea for the project was to use the resources at Blaydon Library, so their maps and books, and they've got amazing archives of photos of the area. So we were just sort of piling through those and having a look, and they were then, I had thought that they all lived in Blaydon, and of course they didn't. They were in Crawcook and Prudhoe and places, so they were just taking the bits that they were interested in, and because they were also photography students, they were doing walks where they live and adding in also photos and sketches from photos and sort of compiling things together. A very creative group. This amazing piece, so this was made with the art club in Blaydon, and they wanted to do a piece on the Blaydon races, so they've got all kinds of imagery and they were looking at different techniques, because you can see with the dryness in here the whatever you glue onto the plastic with, when it's too dry it just starts to peel away.
Yeah.
But they're sort of holding out quite well. So we cut horses' heads at the top, and this was kind of supposed to be like a long mane, so all the horses' heads joining into one mane, and then the imagery at the bottom is from a famous depiction of the blade and roses.
I like that, yeah.
So it was a little bit like herding cats, working with them. They all had different ideas of rushing off to do things, but then the last session, it was lovely how they all came together and sort of figuring out where the different bits.
I like the contrast between the recycled material and a man-made source, like with the light. I think it's brilliant what it's turned out like. It's amazing where she gets the ideas from and how she makes something so simple into something amazing.
Now, have you ever been to a music festival and seen the Yurts and Squrts? No? Well, we're going to visit a person called Justine who's going to tell you all about it right now.
It's great to see how my experience of glamping is put together. I once tried to install a chandelier in my camping accommodation. It was intense.
I'm Justine, and I'm the Managing Director of Cloudhouses, home of Yurts and Squrts.
My name's Jenny. I am Justine's PA. I've known Justine for years. I mean, Justine used to look after me when I was little, and I do the laundry for the festivals. I've done that for maybe 4 years now, so it kind of came from there really.
Cloudhouses is quite a... How do I describe the company? We basically, during the winter months, manufacture what we call yurts, which are like nomadic tents with wooden frames, as you can see behind me, and canvas covers. And we also make a few big marquees, but our main business is making yurts for the glamping industry. When Simon, my husband, and I first met, he was a little hippie living in the woods in a yurt. And for our first Christmas, I made a very, very childish Christmas card. And it was like, it was basically a little spotty toadstool yurt with little windows and curtains, and it was really cute. And from that card came the Squirt, which is a baby yurt. They were going to be for children's playhouses, but I rang a festival up in Scotland called the Wicker Man, and I said, what about this idea? And he said, how many have you got? And I said, 8. And from that, we didn't actually have any. So we had 7 weeks. We worked 24/7, just the two of us, in our living room and in our little shed joined onto the house. And we made 7 squirts. And that was the birth of Cloudhouses, home of Yurts and Squrts.
I started doing 2 days a week in November, and then when the workload got a little bit heavier and I was kind of getting sick of my old job, I decided to come on full-time, and I started full-time in February.
We started very humbly from our little barn joined onto our house. I was sewing in my bedroom, and my office was run from a little tiny corner of my living room. From there we took on a premises at Allen Heads, which was the sewing workshop, which we've only given up about 12 months ago. And then we took the big bullet, bit the big bullet as such, and took on a workshop up the road, which is now a wood workshop. That was a scary thing for us, signing a big contract for several years, thinking, are we going to be able to make ends meet? It worked. And then in May last year, we realised we'd outgrown everything. I couldn't continue to work from home, and we took on this place. And from there, like since May last year, we've now got 6 of us full-time, up to 25 people part-time through the summer, and as you can see, we've just grown. We're huge now. It's been like, I can only describe it as a snowball on the top of a mountain, rolling downhill incredibly fast with 2 little people hanging on for dear life, to be honest. We fell into it almost by mistake, and we've just grown and grown and grown.
If I'm given a task to cut maybe some canvas, I've got a pattern, I'll cut the pattern, I'll iron it the way I'm showed to iron it, and then it gets sewn by Justine or Simon or Helen. Now I know when a client asks me what goes in a yurt, I can kind of tell them, you know, I'm learning each day, so I can kind of tell them what goes in a yurt, from the beds to the lamps, you know, and things like that, the rugs, etc.
So as well as servicing the festivals, which has been our main job since 2007, we are now in the process of trying to branch out. Eventually, we would like to purchase our own campsite, where we would have an eco campsite with outdoor hot tubs, turf roofed showers, beautiful yurts, all themed from the Oriental to, you know, the super extravagant with chandeliers. Yeah, in terms of the future, I'm very excited, and I think all of the employees are too. The idea of putting yurts up once a year in lovely, beautiful rural locations locally and making them look beautiful, having happy guests and not having to load and unload lorries every single week, it's a very exciting proposition.
Part of a team is massive for this business. You can't put a yurt up on your own. You know, there's kind of got to be two or more of you, depending on the size. It's all about helping one another, making things easier if you can help.
My favourite part of this job is folding up something neatly and saying that is the job done, because we're surrounded by mountains of woodwork, mountains of canvas, and when I can finally package that away, put it in a bag and go, job done, I'm happy. I think for young people wanting to get involved in working with Cloudhouses, they've got to be keen, enthusiastic, hard-working, and just have a bit of nous about them, you know, a bit of something special. They don't have to have huge pieces of paper, they don't need degrees, they don't need experience in what we do, they just need a little bit of passion. They give us a little bit of passion, and I'll give them a mile of experience.
Somebody fresh coming into this job, I would say that they need to be hard-working, a good team player, friendly and trustworthy. But yeah, it's great. I love it. Totally different.
What a fantastic company. Now, I'm sure most of us have had the Yurts and Squrts at music festivals, but it's great to see those guys doing so well. Right, back to Lara and see how she's getting on.
Earlier in the show, Lara and Karan made some fantastic art out of recycled bottles. It's great to see such brightly coloured art made out of everyday items. It's like looking through a new set of eyes, really. I recently got told mine were just in the post.
As a child, I loved art, and I think at the age of 13 I was going around telling random people I'm going to be an artist when I grow up, to consternation from parents and people, and so I luckily got into art college, and I thought I was going to be a painter, but I kept sort of wandering off the edge of a canvas and wanting to go around the back of it and off the side, and I realised I just didn't like being within a frame. So, and in those days, there was sculpture and painting, and I guess I was one of the early adopters of the term installation. I did my degree at Hull Art College, and there was a lovely curator at the main gallery, the Ferrans Art Gallery, and she'd seen some of my work and offered me a solo show. Interestingly, that was one of my first sort of found object pieces, but on the back of that show it led to other things, including 2 years on a British Council scholarship to Budapest, and that really opened my eyes to different ways of working. So living in a place where you don't speak the language, you're relying much more on other senses, so you sort of, I was really, really aware of the difference between the streets there and our streets, and starting to look at buildings. And at that time, a lot of the buildings were covered in a green scaffolding netting, but not in terms of we're going to work on this now. It was almost like, yeah, we know this is in a bad state, and at some point we're going to make it better. So I started using the green scaffolding netting in my projects, and it was at that point that I realised how if you're working in a material, it's really good to sort of connect it to a place. So that's become a key feature of my work. If I'm going away on a residency, I'm really open to what's around me and the stories that people are telling me about where they live. It is harder now with the recession. I think the Northeast has been really badly hit, and I'm aware that I'm travelling more to get work. But if I can stay, then that my aim is to be here. It's just such a shame in this country that we get so London centric, and people think that to be an artist you have to go and live in London. You so don't. I'm so not for playing safe. I'm so much for experimenting and playing, seeing where you can go. I quite often say that it's more a vocation than a profession, because it's a dangerous thing to go into the arts for the money. That's really not going to work. And for me, the brilliant thing is I love working with people, and so the kind of work that I do, the sort of social engagement, working with community groups, I find really feeding. And when I'm seeing how other people are using material that I've maybe brought in, and I can learn a huge amount from them. But then, at the end of the day, I can come and just be on my own in here and just very gently continue the playing. I love that sort of, on the one hand, one day I might be working with 120 people, and then the next it's just peace and quiet and just on my own working. I love that contrast.
And there we have it, another episode of Our Creative North, the show that celebrates the creative people that make this region great. Now, if you think you've got a creative spark and you're aged 16 to 25, well, why not get in touch? Our Creative North is not just about celebrating the creative and digital media businesses in this region, but it's about helping you get a job, and we want to hear from you. So if you're a young person, 16 to 25, get in touch. Website listed below, and we look forward to seeing you. Till next week, see you then.